Hello, everyone. Based on the great experience I had at the Blacklake Extreme Triathlon in Montenegro, I thought I would do a quick video blog or vlog on the race itself and the experience and everything while it's still fairly fresh in my head and been going through all the pictures and wanted to share all that. So, first, let me give you a little bit of an explanation about this race. It's a 3.8 kilometer swim. So, it's a traditional Ironman distance race. Uh, but the swim is at about 2,000 meters altitude, or around 6,000, over 6,000 feet uh, high, where the lake is, and the water temperature is around 12 degrees and Celsius, which is around low 50s Fahrenheit. After that, you had to do a 187-kilometer bike ride. Traditional Ironman is 180, so this was 7 kilometers longer, or about 116 miles, or normally about 112 miles, so a little bit longer, but a lot of elevation. So it was going with about 4,000 meters of elevation, three big climbs, each quite substantial. So 4,000 meters, about 13,000 feet of climbing, both up and down. So you got some ups and downs. And then you finish it with a marathon, and the marathon would go up a mountain, down a mountain, and then back up a mountain with about 2,500 meters, about 8,000 feet of climbing. And all this was quite above sea level. As I mentioned, the swim was quite high as well. One of the great things about these types of races is you need a support crew. So you can't do it alone. So there's no aid stations along the way. You need people to help you get your bike out of transition, back into the car after you're done with the bike, helping you with your gear, helping you with nutrition, and so forth. And so I was lucky enough to have a good friend of mine, Rushir, come from Poland over to help me along with this. And the days, we both got in there about 3 days before the race. So we were able to kind of travel around beautiful Montenegro and check out the course. So we did some practice swims, which were quite uh, good that we did those because the lake was quite cold. And again, with the elevation, the breathing was a little harder. So it's hard to find that rhythm breathing at this high altitude of the swim. So the first day when I tried the swim, it was quite tough. But by the third day of practice swim, I was feeling a lot more comfortable. We also went out and drove the whole bike course, and I got off on each of the three big climbs and did about 10 minutes of practice on each of these climbs just to kind of have a mental picture of how steep and how tough the climb was going to be, and just to kind of get a feel for the road quality and so forth. So it was good to see the whole course, and we also had to mark out where we wanted Rushir to be meeting me for nutrition, so he could give me new bottles or food and things like that along the way. And then we also scouted out part of the run course. So we drove up the first 10K, which is on road, and then we kind of looked at the beginning of the course into the mountains, and then we also ran about 5 or 6K of the end of the trails coming out of the mountains before the final big climb. So that was good to be able to do that. And then the other cool thing about this race was it was very small. It was the inaugural race. So the first time that they were trying to do it, it was called a prospect race on the X-Tri series. So the X-Tri series is the same series that does Norseman, Keltman, Swissman, and these extreme triathlons that are getting more and more popular. So there's now about 10 of these. And this was the first inaugural race of this. So only 38 people signed up. Only about, I think, 32 actually showed up and at the registration and so forth. But the cool thing about being small is you can meet people. So got to meet the race director, Igor, who was a great guy, local guy who's ran a few triathlons in Montenegro before. Crazy guy, did a great job with this race, and it was great just talking to him, understanding his vision, understanding the course, kind of create some excitement. Also got to meet some of the other athletes, and also got to meet the president of X-Tri, Stuart, who was there monitoring the race and see how it goes, to see if it would turn from a prospect race into a regular X-Tri race. So you got to meet all these people, which was a lot of fun, and it was really a cool experience. So on race morning, Rashir and I got up very early. The race start was at 5 a.m. and so we had to bring over the bike and get everything set up for the first transition area when you get out of the swim and go onto the bike. So make sure you have your shoes, change of clothes, things like that. Race morning, it was -1 degree Celsius out, or around 30 degrees Fahrenheit, so it was quite cold, which made it a bit of a challenge for getting out of the water because you're getting out of the cold water into the cold air, which wasn't going to be a lot of fun. So we had to think about hand warmers, things like that. So we got everything kind of set up to manage that when I got out of the water. Also, it was such a small race. They're documenting a lot of things. I got interviewed for a small documentary that they're making, which isn't out yet, but we'll share that once it is. So that was kind of cool. And then I went down to the water and got ready. Now, when we got down there, it was dark. Originally, they said that there would be some light from the moon, but there was a cloud coverage, so there was no moon. And so it was it was pitch black, basically, out. And they had lights out on the buoys and where we were supposed to swim, but they were quite hard to see. And so, it was quite a mental challenge to get ready. Had a couple videos here of me leaving Rushir and with going out to start the swim that you can kind of see the darkness and kind of the atmosphere at that time.
All right, good luck.
Thank you. Okay, you can see between the legs. 5 of them, yes, you can see. There are the lights. There are the people. You will have the kayak in front of you. 30 seconds start!
10 sekund, давай вже.
Vai Michele! Vai piano! Go Seb! Go Seb! Vai Dragana! Vai Poi! Vai Dean!
So as you can see, it was quite the atmosphere, very dark out. And we had to swim across one lake, about 500 meters, and I had to actually stop a couple times just because you're so dark, the altitude, your nerves. I was having a hard time breathing. You'd bump into people, you couldn't even see them. You couldn't see anything. It was just very scary. Actually, 2 people decided not to even start the race because of it, and one person went about 100 meters and then turned around and said enough of this and stopped as well. So 28 people showed up in the morning, 2 didn't start, 1 turned around, so only 25 of us got out of the water. And again, I had to backstroke a couple times just to calm myself down and get through that first 500 meters. Then we got out and went across into another smaller lake. I couldn't see anything. I actually ran ashore. At one point, had a rock on the shore because couldn't see where I was going. And there was lights on the buoys, but they're very hard to see, and they're very far in the distance. And there were some people walking to support their athlete, and they would have like iPhone lights on their phones, and you'd see those as well. So you'd see more than one light, so you weren't always sure which light you should be swimming to. So basically figured out, went slow, went off, fairly on course compared to some other people that were way off course. And so you kind of got through this, and then went back into the big lake. And then the sun, or not the sun, but the light started coming up, but there was a huge fog on top of the water, which was quite challenging to see anything. So even though it was getting light out, you had this huge fog, so you couldn't even see the buoys or the lights up ahead. And at one point, I was screaming at the guy on the boat, I can't see anything, where do I go? And he just kind of pointed in a direction, which, again, maybe I'm going in that direction for 30 seconds, but then I don't know if I'm still going in that direction. And So at one point I had to like pull my goggles off, kind of kick out of the water, and I kind of saw a buoy far, far away. And I looked up, and in the landscape there was kind of a dip in the mountain in the background. So I just said, okay, I'm going to go to that dip in the mountain, and just kind of swam towards that, and basically was pretty much on target for the buoy. And then the last one going back, there was huge lights and such at the end, so you can kind of see that. And again, it was a hard swim. I usually swim these things in probably an hour 20 to an hour 25. I did about an hour 35 on this, just because stopping, the anxiety, hard to swim, probably a little off course and everything. And when I got out, I was thrilled to get out, and you can kind of see my raw emotions of getting out in this next clip.
Bravo! Woo! Come on! Woo! Woo!
Fuck you, Blacklake!
Come on!
So thrilled to get out of the water, and then we had to focus on the transition to the bike. So Bashir and I talked before. We decided to take the wetsuit off right out of the water, even though it was cold outside, just because there's a little bit more space. I wanted to put some tennis shoes on because there's a lot of rocks up until the transition area. So that allowed us to kind of move quickly to the transition area. And then once we got there, I decided to completely change clothes. So I had a tri-suit on, took that off. Everyone was kind of just not worrying about getting naked or anything like that. So you just kind of did it, had a towel, quickly put on another tri-suit, a dry one, and then started putting on a few different layers because it was quite cold out. So I had about 3 layers on top, put a couple pairs of socks on for the bike. Also, right when we got there, we got some hot tea, which was great. And yeah, focused on trying to do a quick transition, getting dry. Rashir also gave me some hand warmers. Again, the focus was trying to get onto the bike as soon as possible. It took us about 9-10 minutes probably, because I had to completely change, and was kind of taking my time. I actually got interviewed as well there real quick for about 30 seconds or a minute as well about my feelings of the race so far. Again, kind of a really cool atmosphere, and then headed out on the bike. And it was cold at the beginning. It was quite cold at the beginning. I had gloves on, but the feet, even though dried them off and stuff, still felt wet and cold. And it took about probably an hour before it warmed up enough. I think it warmed up to about 7, 8, 9 degrees Celsius. So maybe, again, around 50 degrees Fahrenheit through the day, maybe a little bit more. But it was quite cool during the day. And the bike was tough, as you can see through some of the videos here.
How's it going? Yeah. Where's the second bottle?
Well, it's down there. This broke going down that hill. It's so bumpy.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
I had to stop to go get it.
As you heard, I lost a few bottles. Part of my bike bottle holder broke as well, which caused me some nutrition issues along the ways, because I lost my nutrition a couple times. Twice I lost bottles during the ride due to some of the bumpy roads. Going on the downhills was quite bumpy, but it was a beautiful ride. But I was struggling. I was definitely struggling.
How's it going?
Socks.
Socks? You want to take them off?
Socks. Yeah.
But then after the second big climb, I found a groove. There was about I don't know, maybe 60, 70 kilometer stretch. So, about 40 miles where it was flat or slightly downhill. And I was just flying. And at one point, even though it was a small race, I got into this section with these 2 other guys. And we were just kind of riding off of each other through some very, very, very cool sections. So yeah, it was very cool. And I just can't reiterate how beautiful the course was now. Of course, I was in a lot of pain. I was suffering quite a bit because I don't know. I think the hill climbs were a lot harder than I expected, even though I rode part of them a few days before the race. But I think the main issue was my nutrition strategy wasn't perfect and wasn't great, and I lost 2 bottles with nutrition during the race, which made me very undernutrition, and I didn't try to make it up quick enough. And I was focusing, even though it's a long race, you can sometimes focus on just trying to save 30 seconds, 45 seconds here and there, which was not a good idea in retrospect. And again, the elevation as well. This is all way above sea level, so I think that took out a little bit more from me than I thought it would as well. So even though, going through this beautiful course, and again, you can see some of these pictures are just absolutely gorgeous. But I was struggling, when I hit about 155 kilometers, so I had about 30 to go, I was really, really suffering. There is I was having trouble getting up hills. I felt just depleted, and you can see from this video I was not in the best of states.
Go, Michael!
Thank you. Jutro su 5 počeli, plivali su prvo u jezeru 4 km.
To triatlon.
Yes.
Triatlon. Svaka im čast.
Can you get my charger for my phone? My watch? Yeah. It's in there. Oh, thanks.
Great job.
There you go.
I feel depleted.
Okay, so we'll make another one.
Yeah, for the bike. And bring me the banana and the sandwich, please. Sorry.
Thank you. Došla majka je tu, jede bananu, služe ga, evo sad će brzo dođe sandvič. Samo je 40 ovdje na polu.
So I struggled through the rest of the bike, the last 30K or so. It took me almost 2 hours, actually, which was really slow. I had to stop a couple times on the last big uphill. But finally, it took me 8 hours on the bike to get through it, which was actually still like the 8th or 9th fastest out of 25. But it was hard. I was spent. I got to the transition. Finally, Rashir was there, as always, providing great support, grabbing my bike as I went and changed to get ready for the marathon. But I just felt like I had no energy. My stomach was a bit of a mess. I tried to eat something. I was having a hard time eating banana. But I made a quick change. We actually had the second fastest change out of the bike to the run transition. And then we set off for the run. And the run was, the first 10K was basically on road, but it was uphill, up entering to the mountain entrance. So it was runnable, but I was just dead. And Rashir was trying to encourage me. I ran maybe a little bit in the first 3K, which was fairly flat. But then once the uphill had, I tried to run a couple times, but really couldn't get it going, maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds only. Rashir was trying to push me, but I was really struggling getting anything in, and I just felt out of it. But then we hit the 10K part finally, which meant that I was going to go on my own up into the mountains, and I still didn't feel great. And Rashir was helping me get ready. I was putting on my wind gear because it was getting colder out. The sun was going to be going down in about an hour, so I get my headlamp on and stuff. I set off for the mountain, and I just didn't feel right. And I hit about a kilometer into the trail, and I hit this really technical, hard climb. It was really steep, and I kind of just looked at it and sat down for a while, tried to gather my thoughts. The problem was, if I'd gone up that climb, it was basically no returning back, and I wouldn't have any place to get off the mountain, probably for about 15 kilometers, about 10 miles. And I wasn't feeling great. I was having trouble getting stuff down. It was getting dark, and I was just concerned I was putting myself in danger, and I just didn't have the energy. And there weren't a lot of people in this race, so I could get stuck out there somewhere. So I gave it a lot of thought. A couple people tried to get me to go with them, but I just didn't have it. I was concerned kind of about myself and such. So I made a hard decision, thinking about it for a while, but I decided to turn around and went back to the 1K, back to that 10K checkpoint, where I met the race director, and he was kind of gave me a big hug and said I had to kind of take a do not finish, and he drove me back to the T2, the second transition point where a lot of the people were and the cars were, and things like that. So that was the race. Great experience, crazy swim, hard bike. Couldn't get through the run. Still disappointed with that. Clearly nutrition, maybe a little with the altitude, a little underestimating the effort on the bike. A lot of thoughts. Maybe I should have pushed it through the mountain. I don't know. But I didn't. Again, it was such a small race. Bashir was awesome. People were awesome. Volunteers, everyone supporting the race was great. Fantastic race. Had a great time. Montenegro. People are just amazing. The whole thing was amazing. And so, I've given it a lot of thought in the last few weeks, and I definitely will go do this race again. Have a different respect for it, and we'll have different preparation, a different plan. But I will definitely go back. So that was Blacklake for you. Thanks for listening. If you got this far, great experience. Again, continuing to learn through this journey of going into extreme triathlons, and still very young, even though I've been racing now for a little over 3 years, but still very young into this and still learning a lot. So I will come back and give Blacklake another try. But until then, get back to training, get back to working, and got other goals that I'm going to achieve. So thanks again.